Hi, I'm Umbrian Libris. In my Calyrex commentary a couple of weeks ago, I said that one of the things that I dislike the most about it is the fact that it can communicate with the player in a human language, and what that means for Pokemon intelligence. A lot of people took issue with that for different reasons, so I want to work through how I think about Pokemon intelligence to try to show a little bit better why Calyrex feels unique to me. This won't be a theory exactly, more of an overview of the evidence and of where the evidence is lacking or faulty and how I interpret all of it. First thing I want to touch on is a quick note on terminology, because in my Calyrex video I complained that Calyrex displays human-level sentience. But my friend Gunno pointed out to me that sentience isn't quite the right term, although it is misused often enough that I think most of you probably understood what I meant by that. Sentience actually refers to the ability to perceive things with your senses. So any creature with a central nervous system is definitely sentient, and even something like a plant could arguably be considered sentient. A better term would be sapience, which is the ability to think and acquire wisdom, although even that is not uniquely human. We humans like to think ourselves superior to other animals. We like to say that we are more intelligent, more rational. But studies with chimpanzees and dolphins, crows, have documented all of these other animals displaying significant levels of intelligence, and rationality, and consciousness, and so on. Ultimately, the only way in which we are definitely unique is that we are human and other animals are not. In the same way that our skeletons are unique, but other animals have skeletons too, our mind is unique, but other animals have minds too. Still, the distinction between human and non-human is still important because we, more or less, know how humans think. It's how we think. It's what we're instinctually familiar with. Non-human animals think too, but they think in often very different ways, to the point that we historically assumed they did not think. We have trouble communicating directly with other animals, but it's not because non-human animals aren't intelligent enough. It's because we think too differently. Even studies of animal intelligence are hard to formulate because if we don't know how they think, how can we judge how intelligent they are? We can really only judge based on what we know, which is human intelligence, and even that we don't know that well. And so it bothers me when any Pokemon medium, but especially the games because they are the primary canon, treat Pokemon as if they have a human minds. Even if you subscribe to the theory that people evolved from Pokemon, I think we can all agree that Pokemon are not people. Pokemon are not human, so they can't have human minds. Other media bother me in similar ways, even media that I enjoy and care about, like Okami and Zelda, and several books of science fiction and fantasy that I've read have characters, non-human and human, that can communicate perfectly. The difference is that in most cases, this, let's call it intelligence parity across species. This is established early on, so it becomes part of the premise of the world, even if it's never properly explained. Is it ever explained in the Zelda universe how the Hylians, the Rito, the Gorons, and the Zora can all understand each other to the point of having a common language? If it is, I don't remember, but that's okay because that's just how this world works. Pokemon never really did that with Pokemon intelligence. In most main series games, there is not enough information, and certainly not enough demonstration, to establish that Pokemon and humans have intelligence parity. What we have in the games concerning Pokemon intelligence comes down to Pokemon being able to obey battle commands, some Pokedex entries, especially about Psychic-type Pokemon, the actions of certain Pokemon, in particular plot-relevant legendary Pokemon, and a few instances of Pokemon communicating directly with humans. I'm going to try to quickly cover all of these aspects, and I'm going to fail because I don't do it quickly. Let's start with Pokemon being able to obey battle commands, because that's an easy one. So can non-human animals in real life. They can learn words, or rather sounds, and actions or intentions that are associated with them. If you can train a dog for police duty without it having a human mind, you can train a Pokemon for battle without it having a human mind. The Pokedex is another easy one because, as I've discussed many times before, the Pokedex is often exaggerated and unreliable. Even if you want to take it at face value, what does it really mean for Alakazam to have an IQ of 5,000? Not only is IQ meant to measure human intelligence, which would make it meaningless to apply it to a non-human creature, 5,000 is about 25 times higher than the highest possible IQ score. How do you even administer a test to something that is supposedly so much smarter than anyone scoring that test could possibly be? No human could even be smart enough to come up with a test that measures that high. 5,000 IQ is just an exaggerated huge number. Similarly, what does it mean for Metagross to be smarter than a supercomputer? How do you present a problem to a Metagross, a problem that would be complex enough to require a supercomputer? How do you present that to a Metagross in a way that the input and output would be comparable to a supercomputer? Or what does it mean for the Pokedex to say that Lapras or Latios and Latias are able to comprehend human speech? In what way is this notable or different from the comprehension level of other Pokemon? These are all rare Pokemon, so was this ability measured or demonstrated experimentally, or was it just anecdotal? We don't know, and so we also don't know how much we can trust these statements. In the games, especially since Generation 3, you often encounter legendary Pokemon that seem to know what they're doing. In Emerald, once you find Rayquaza at Skypillar, it flies off to end the clash between Groudon and Kyogre. In Diamond and Pearl, the Lake Guardians show up at Spear Pillar, so many pillars. The Lake Guardians show up at Spear Pillar to break the red chain that controlled Dialga or Palkia. In Sun and Moon, when Nebby finally evolves into Solgaleo or Lunala and Lily asks it for help finding Lusamine, Nebby knows where to go. But none of these Pokemon, or any of the other examples that I didn't mention, ever speak for themselves. We are led to understand what their intentions are, either by the way the plot is formulated, or because there's another character there who says, oh, this must be what they intended. Like in Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, when Latios or Latios shows up to take you to the southern island, Steven is the one who's there to interpret its intentions for you. And it's certainly possible that these Pokemon have the exact understanding of the situation that we are led to believe that they have, and that we get their intentions perfectly, but that's not necessarily the case. For one, non-human animals in real life can have an understanding of danger and of needing to get help or of having to do something to fix the problem without having human minds. But also, humans, as much as we love to think ourselves unique, we also love to project and ascribe human emotions and intentions to other animals, even in ways that are totally wrong. We think dogs feel guilty about destroying our favorite shoe, when that guilty expression is really fear of being reprimanded. When a cat shows you its belly, we think it's cute and wants to be petted, when in fact it's expressing how it feels safe around you, and actually petting the belly is violating its trust. And even if you fully believe that these Pokemon are showing that they have human minds, this only started to be a thing at the very earliest in Pokemon Crystal. Suicune was the first Pokemon to have a plot role and arguably seek you out directly, but it's still not establishing that human and Pokemon intelligence parity all that early on. Pokemon speaking, on the other hand, that has been a thing since Generation 1, sort of. Because it was never a common thing, and like I mentioned in the Calyrex video, most, if not all, previous examples of Pokemon speaking in the game universe could have another explanation. Copycat's Doduo, for example. I remember when I first saw that, I thought it must have a sign around its neck because it certainly wouldn't be speaking. But it could be parroting human speech like Chatot does in Generation 4, and like presumably Team Rocket's Murkrow does in Generation 2. Generation 7 and 8 also have a fair few examples of Pokemon talking, like Oranguru and Honedge, but they're only saying a couple of words in kind of broken English. So again, it's unclear whether there are human-like minds behind those words, or if they're just imitating sounds, maybe with some rudimentary understanding of what they mean. Marowak's ghost tells you to go away, but it's a ghost. Sure, it's the ghost of a Pokemon, but ghosts can do all kinds of creepy things. Maybe it's an illusion, like the backpacker in Lothlorn Forest that talks to you and gives you the TM for Snarl, but then turns out to be a Zoroark. There's also a Mimikyu and Tapu Koko in Generation 7 that say a few words, but in ways that could be interpreted as auditory illusions. But, you might say, for those Pokemon to be able to create those illusions, they would have to have a mind able to create those scenarios and formulate those sentences. But an illusion doesn't exist outside of the mind. There may be external factors that are causing it, like with your run-of-the-mill optical illusion, but it's your brain misinterpreting the stimuli that causes the illusion. Zoroark or Marowak or Mimikyu or Tapu Koko, they might all just be projecting a feeling, and your brain is interpreting that in a way that it understands and filling in the gaps so that it makes sense. Our brains are very good at that. If you feel enough fear, you might essentially hallucinate a voice that tells you to go away or that threatens to curse you. Zoroark's case is much more complex, but its whole thing is that it creates illusions, so it doesn't feel like that much of a stretch. And hallucinations, or auditory illusions, probably also explain the times that N says that he can hear a Pokemon. Nobody else can hear it. Could be telepathy, but why would N be the only one who can receive it? I think it's more likely that N can just understand the feelings of Pokemon and their body language better than most people, and his brain is basically manifesting a voice in his head. Put all together like this, it does make it seem like there's a lot of instances of people hallucinating Pokemon voices, and maybe it's evidence of something more. But it's really not a lot. It's a few instances here and there, spread throughout nearly 25 years worth of games. Before Calyrex, the only Pokemon to be shown speaking substantially in the games was Rotom. But that was only as part of the Rotom Dex. Rotom just squeaks like a Rotom when it's not inside the device. And at least as far as I remember, it's never established that Rotom is the intelligence behind the Pokedex. It's quite likely that Rotom just provides power. It is an electric type Pokemon after all. And the Pokedex would require a lot of power for things like island scan and GPS and artificial speech synthesis, things that require a lot of computation and therefore a lot of power. But even if Rotom does have a role in the intelligence of the Dex, like maybe it provides a more organic replacement for machine learning, we can't rule out that its ability to formulate sentences, and certainly its ability to speak them, is aided, at least, by the software of the Dex. And so, in the Crown Tundra, when Calyrex possesses Peony to speak to you, and then uses full, complete, complex sentences, it absolutely stood out to me as something way beyond what we'd ever seen before. Calyrex is speaking more or less directly, so we don't have a second character there to tell you what they think Calyrex wants. Calyrex is not speaking telepathically, and there's no reason that I can think of, at least, to interpret what's going on here as an illusion or hallucination. The one caveat is that it is speaking through Peony. And as my friend Gano, once again, suggested, if Rotom's intentions can be translated into human speech by the software of the Dex, and if the Pokemon that use illusions rely on the brain of the receiver to interpret their intentions, then maybe Peony's brain is also serving as a translator and receiving only the feelings and the intentions behind what Calyrex wants to communicate and putting that into words. But the reason I don't really buy that is that Calyrex speaks in a way that is completely different from the way that Peony himself speaks. And I don't know for sure, but I would think that if Calyrex is hijacking Peony's thoughts to make his brain figure out how to express himself, Calyrex would just speak the way Peony does. And so the only interpretation that I'm left with is that Calyrex is telling Peony's mouth exactly what words to speak. Which, to be fair, is better than it speaking for itself, because I don't think Calyrex would have the right oral anatomy to form human words. But that means that Calyrex has a mind that is very much, if not exactly, like that of a human, so that it's able to communicate with us in a way that we understand it exactly. And I don't like that, because it goes against my lifelong understanding of Pokemon as essentially animals, as certainly non-human. You're more than welcome to interpret the evidence differently, but what I think is important is that the Pokemon games in particular did not establish early and clearly that humans and Pokemon have intelligence parity. They do this kind of thing a lot where they don't establish things clearly and just leave it up to the player until the point where they decide that it's important to say one way or the other. But that means that we can find it jarring when the explicit official interpretation doesn't match with our headcanon. I didn't always have this exact view of Pokemon. Obviously, as a kid, I had a very different understanding of animal intelligence and of how different non-human thinking is from the way we think. But I did always think of Pokemon as basically animals, and I don't like any of the evidence that goes against that worldview. But Calyrex is by far the biggest one. I didn't talk about the anime or the movies. I intended to, but this video became very long. And Pokemon intelligence is established very differently in the anime. I don't think it's established clearly. As far as I know, there's plenty of contradiction there, but I'm not as familiar with the anime as I am with the games. And as I've mentioned many times before, the anime is a separate canon. So a lot of the things that apply to the anime won't apply to the games. And more importantly, the anime is a cartoon and takes the same kinds of liberties in terms of its realism as any cartoon that takes place in the real world. I'm sure you have your own ideas about Pokemon intelligence. I hope that I was able to sway you at least a little bit, but either way, I would love to hear what you think. Thank you for watching, and thank you to my patrons, especially luxury patron Ethan from Chicago. I'll see you in the next chapter.